Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Julie Noonan. Julie is an executive coach, transformational change leader, speaker, consultant, and futurist. She has spent her career working with companies of all sizes, helping people ride the waves of change. Now, I'm excited to have her on the show to talk about how leaders can avoid obsolescence in an ever-shifting business landscape. So, Julie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate being here.
Yes, it is nice to meet you, and I think this subject is really important for all of our listeners. We have various different age brackets that listen in on the show, so I'm excited to what you're bringing to the table. But before we get into some of those details, tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up getting in the coaching, consulting, and speaking business.
In a roundabout way, probably like a lot of people.
Yes.
I started my career as an instructional designer. I had high hopes to be a professional teacher in college, but that didn't work out. I didn't like macaroni and cheese and hot dogs that much. So I went into corporate America, became an instructional designer, did a lot of training and development. From there, went into more organizational development and got into change management when I went into being a consultant. Loved consulting, loved the variety, loved being able to learn about all the different industries and really just watch different people in different stages of change throughout my career. So that's how I got into change management. And then over the course of my change management journey, I found myself the higher level of position I was asked to play. I wound up coaching a lot more of the executives who were sponsoring these big changes, mainly because they didn't have a really good handle on how to handle emotion. Were very scared of it, or would never say that, but they were very scared of
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
But it was probably the single biggest thing that they worried about but never talked about. And so I wound up becoming an executive coach because I just saw so much change in the world, especially after I started my company. It was right before the pandemic, and man, did that rip the Band-Aid off,
Oh, yeah.
as far
Yeah.
as change goes, that we all had to make that change. And so I've really been spending a lot more time since the pandemic actually coaching leaders on managing change, not only for their companies, but for themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. It's interesting you said that you started out doing change management with helping lead groups, and then what you end up finding out is that the leader has to change as well. And I think that's the hardest part often. It's like we can tell
Yeah.
groups of people to change, but ourselves, what do you mean us change too? We don't want to change. We want other people to change. Nobody likes change, right? Including leaders. So interesting that you
Exactly.
gravitated in that direction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one thing I want to ask you about is you said on your website, and I love this, and I want to talk to you about it. You said that you have a genuine love of people in all of their messiness. What do you mean by that?
People are essentially emotional beings who think every once in a while.
Yeah.
And I think Brene Brown said that, and I just gravitated towards that. But when I was thinking about what I absolutely love the most about what I do is watching people deal with life, whether it's in an organization, whether it's in their personal lives, but watching people either deal with it poorly or deal with it well. And their emotions are just so messy.
Mm.
And depending on how you perceive emotions, you can see them as being messy and destructive, or you can see them as being an essential part of your life and the lives of others. And getting people through the emotional pieces in order for them to be able to be productive and to move forward, that's the piece that I love to do. And many leaders, as I just mentioned before, they really shy away from that. They shy away from the messiness of people.
Yeah.
And we are all messy.
I love that you say that. That's why it really triggered me when I saw it, because it's like that's the thing that I've loved the most about leadership is that I always say that people are messy.
Mm-hmm.
but they're also
Mhm.
amazing, you know. And
They
if
are.
you could just
Yeah.
sort of put it past a little bit, okay, they're going to be messy, but
Mhm.
wait till you see the amazing things they're going to do, you know. And if you can just deal with the messiness, you're going to get the amazing thing too. And I think a lot of leaders don't want to deal with the messiness. They just want amazing, you know. And if you're not amazing, I fire you, I get somebody else, right?
You're
but
exactly right.
we all come with the baggage, we all come with the history, we all come with the emotions, we all come with our past lives, and we bring it to the table. And we, as a leader, we try to bring all these people together with all these different backgrounds. And so yeah, it seems messy at times, but the truth
Yeah.
is it's also amazing at times if we can get it right.
Well, and why do you think the latest fan or the latest fad right now, or the buzzwords right now that you hear most are psychological safety
Yeah, yeah,
and, corporate or mental health wellness? All of that comes from dealing with emotions.
yeah, yeah,
And when we had the industrial revolution and we had the command and control and we had the people are robots kind of corporate environments, emotions weren't allowed. They weren't
right.
allowed. They were frowned upon. And even today, they pretty much still are. I mean, I have fought that battle my entire career. I'm one of the people that would look at my boss and say, listen, I don't do subtle. So if you want me to do something different, or if you're giving me feedback, don't sugarcoat it. Hit me with the 2x4.
Yeah.
I might be pissed about it, or excuse me, I might be upset about it for a while, but I'll get over it and then I'll be ready to move forward.
Yeah.
And I think what we are getting because of that attitude of stuff at all, no emotion is allowed, is we're getting the psychological safety argument that people don't feel like that they can say what they really feel or think, and then instead they wind up leaving the company as opposed to shining and being amazing, like you said.
Yeah, I see it all the time. It's very
Mm-hmm.
interesting, and it is good to see the shift. So I'm glad to see it personally.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wanted to ask you, you have a master's degree in literature. So
Yes.
and you say that that helps you actually coach people through change. So tell us a little bit about that, because I think it's a neat perspective.
Well, if you think about it, a really, really great story, a really great novel is really and truly nothing more than the study of people in a
Hmm.
situation, typically stressful, and how they deal with it and what the consequences are. When I was looking at my love for change management, I kept thinking, why do I love this so much? What is it that is drawing me to it? And what I realized was that my background in literature really prepared me to see people in stressful situations and see the connections and see the outcomes and see the plot twists, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, it really helps me to see patterns within an organization, to help me see cultures very quickly within an organization and zero in on where there's opportunity to change things and make things better.
Interesting. I think of
Yeah.
like the character arc in most stories, you know, it's like
Yes.
our leader's journey. Like I was the guy that was assigned to
Yep.
fix businesses, right? So they brought me in, there's problems, I show up and I'm facing, a disjointed team, bad financial numbers, scrap problems, safety problems. And so I'm that character that falls into the hero's journey, and I'm in this conflict and I've got to bring everything to a happy ending at the end, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
so much like a story arc, and then every chapter,
Yep.
something changes, like you make improvements and you fall backwards, right? And then and so I really do think that the story is helpful, and it's also helpful as leaders as we're communicating how the business is changing. If we keep it into the story, here's where we're at in the
Yes.
story. We're at the beginning of the story, but the end of the story looks like this, and we got to get there. And so there's likely going to be some mountains we have to climb and some deep valleys of problems we're going to face, but we're going to
Mhm.
end up getting to where we're headed to somewhere. And if we can remember to communicate in a story format with our employees, they can see that they're on a journey with us.
Exactly. And not only that, but if you can communicate your culture in the way that you would communicate a story.
Mm,
And look at, and actually, I did a speech just this past Friday for a group, and we were talking about culture and how it impacts the bottom line. And I said, okay, if you think about your best friend, what are some adjectives you would describe as your best friend? Think of your nemesis. What are some adjectives there? Now,
mm,
think of your company. Think of your company and describe your company with adjectives as if they were a person.
mm,
And it was amazing. It was amazing for them to actually think about the culture of their company. And it's not all, great roses, and it's not all, oh my gosh, we're going down the tubes. It's a combination of, here are some things that I absolutely adore and really bring people into my company and really thrill customers.
mm,
And these are some things that I'm not really quite satisfied with.
mm.
I wish we had a better level of trust between finance and sales, or whatever the case may be. And so that was just a really interesting argument to bring to them and help them see their stories and create a character that is their company
Mm.
in that story.
I like that. I like that. I've never
Mhm,
quite heard it put that way, and I really like that. So
mhm.
how would you define your company as you would your best friend or enemy? That's an interesting way
Yeah.
to think about it. Those adjectives. So yeah, good. That's an interesting one. Leaders take that one to heart. That's like kind of a neat one to think about. So instead of saying what's bad and what's good, but like describe it in terms of adjectives. I like that.
Mhm.
Um, so what are some of the big shifts that are taking place in the workplace that we as leaders have to sort of watch out for so that we don't kind of get left behind?
I think, speaking to the boomers specifically, I'm actually the last year of the boomers. So
Okay.
I am 1960, 63, 64, depending. Yes, I'm 59. So, and I like being 59. So
Well,
there,
I'm a first year Gen Xer, so I'm 67, so
there you
we're
go.
right next to each other.
That's right.
Yeah.
But what I would say to the boomers is, if you take a look at it, you know, given that the quote unquote retirement age is 67, we have about 9 more years to really make our mark. And in that 9 years, we have to remain relevant.
Mm,
And what is happening is, a lot of the values that we were brought up with, meaning in the corporate world, not personal lives, but in the corporate world, you work more than 40 hours a week, and you're there late, you come in early, and you're going up the corporate ladder, and all of those things. A lot of those things are no longer applicable in the world that we live in now.
right.
And there are more millennials in the workforce than there are any other generation right now. So they've overtaken the power structure, but that power structure was in for so long, and it was so ingrained that those of us who are left in the boomer generation, and even some of the early Xers, um, what we're finding is we're clinging to a little bit too hard
Oh yeah.
to what was, as opposed to what could be. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with my executive clients over the last couple of years, talking about, the bashing the millennials, bashing the Generation Z and their values and their mores and whatever the case may be. I say, what we really need to be doing is learning from them
Mm,
and keeping, they know things that we weren't brought up with. They know things that they can share with us, and we have the experience. If we present that experience properly and with respect and trust, then they will get a boon, if you will, of experience that they can then use to be better leaders going forward with their own value set.
mm,
I think as soon as anyone becomes closed minded and quits learning and quits questioning um, their own dogma, uh, you get into trouble. you start becoming the working retired, I call them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've talked about that in the show. I think it's a big part of it is this idea of a growth mindset, even
Oh,
as you
yes.
get older. I think it's harder because we get set in our ways. When we come in, like
Mhm.
I came into corporate world after the military, and I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to go up the
Mhm.
corporate ladder and maybe retire from this company, get the gold watch, and because that's what my dad did and my grandfather did, right? So
Mhm.
that's what we thought was the path. But um the twists and turns and changes, and you find yourself like that it's not the world that what's not my father's world anymore, right? And when
No.
I talk with the millennials, and they tend to be a little more me orientated, where we tend to be a little more well, we're going to sacrifice for the company. And I look at what they think, and I think, well, what's wrong with that? Why not take care of me a little bit, right? Why am I sacrificing all for the gold watch, right? And I think that there's
Yeah.
some we can learn a lot from that mindset, or that a different perspective, I guess, because they weren't raised the way we were raised. And I think I enjoy it. I have one other older employee than me, but I'm one of the older employees, and
Mhm.
the people I work with day to day, in and out, are millennials and the Gen Zs, and I get so much energy from them because they see the world completely different than I do. They're living in a time when they've always had a computer, they've always had a cell phone,
Mhm.
they've always had internet, and we didn't
Yep.
have that, right? So to me, it's just like, it's kind of neat to see that the way that they grew up was completely different, and there's kind of exciting things you can learn from that.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about the me versus we, actually, I would say also that we could switch that around because we, the boomers, we would sacrifice for the company, but we also were taught to compete with each other.
Yeah,
And so we don't collaborate nearly as well
yeah,
as the millennials and the Gen Zs.
yeah,
They might be all about me. If it's a choice between me and the company, it's going
yeah,
to be me
right,
or my family,
right,
right? But when it comes down to me as an employee, I want to collaborate. They'll put
yeah,
a team
yeah,
together in a heartbeat.
yeah,
And I absolutely adore that about them. It is very challenging, I will say, sometimes when I am asking, okay, who's in charge of this? Who is ultimately responsible for getting this done? And they'll say, well, we all are.
yes, yes,
You
that's very
know,
true. Yes.
and that's probably the biggest thing that I have a problem with coming from a project management background. There's tasks and there's people that are assigned one person, and here's
Right.
the deadline. Um, so I'm learning a lot from that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
it's great.
I am as well. And I think it's, if
Mhm.
you have an open mind and you're willing to look at it, with curiosity, and not a fixed, like, oh, that's not the way we should do things.
Right.
I think you can gain a lot from it. And I think one thing you talk about, and I was just curious about that, is this idea of reverse mentoring. And
Hmm.
what does that look like? And I guess I take it we're touching a little bit on it through this conversation, but what is that when you say reverse mentoring, and why is that important?
Hmm. It was a term that was coined by Jack Welch way back in the 90s, with GE. And at that time, it meant a younger person mentoring an older generation person. It's hard to say. It's hard not to say young and old, but
Right, right.
I try. I try really hard. But that's what it was back then. Recently, it's come back around, and a lot of large organizations that I've worked with have instituted a reverse mentoring program. Some of them call it reverse mentoring, some of them call it, something else. But really, truly, it is matching up a millennial or Gen Z employee with a boomer or Xer employee,
Mm,
and with the intention that they teach each other, that they mentor each other. Where that works very successfully is when the line of power or
Yeah.
the organizational power is not one over the other, that they're not in the same business unit or that sort of thing. It also works very well when they each have very specific goals that they want to enhance. So the younger person might say, I want to improve my communication skills or my public speaking skills, or I want to understand more about this industry and really what makes it work behind the scenes. And the older person might say, I really need to understand more about social media and
Mm.
influencers and
Yeah.
what the real impact is on the bottom line and some of this new technology. Technology is a big one in this back and forth. But there are also some programs, and I have one that is reverse mentoring that's outside of an organization. And so I'll have an executive coach coachee of mine who expresses an interest, and I'll hook them up with someone in a master's program or a person young in their career, put them together and just monitor that relationship, set it up to succeed and monitor the relationship as part of my coaching. I'm thinking about calling it switch mentoring as opposed to reverse mentoring because it
Yeah.
makes more sense. It's a two-way
It
situation.
really is. I think it's two-way. I think it's great. I mean,
Mhm.
the amount of things I've learned from young people is amazing. I mean,
Oh yeah.
like today, like I know web skills. Like I have web skills. Like I'm 55. I shouldn't have web skills, but I've learned it by working with younger people. I'm like, teach me
Yeah.
how to do this because I want to be able to do it on my own. And
Hmm.
so, I learned this, and now I have skills that most people my age don't have, right? And
Hmm.
I'm not afraid to dig into the background behind like WordPress and just make something look good on my
Right.
company website or my personal website. And when I meet, a lot of times I'll meet other authors they're similar ages mine. It's like, who does your website? I'm like, well, I do. They're like, well, how did you learn how to do that? I'm like, young people.
Yeah.
Where you learn how to do things. And so I really do believe in that idea of learning from everyone that you're around. But I think
Hmm.
you know, don't dismiss the fact that somebody's younger than you, that you can't learn from them. And I think
Yeah.
that's the idea, that having that growth mindset, that the ability to say, what does this person bring to the table that I would like to
Hmm.
learn, that I would like to master?
Right.
Social media is one that I think I've done pretty good on most things, but like when I look at TikTok, I'm so lost and I feel like such an old man when I get around TikTok. I do have a TikTok
Uh,
page and I do have some leadership stuff on it, but boy, it seems so old fashioned the way I do it compared to other people. So I think that
yeah.
we can learn from everyone that's around us, including young people.
Well, and I think your example just points out um, a huge difference in values and attitudes,
Hmm.
right? When I started working, I worked at a bank for 10 years early in my career. Women were not allowed to wear pants. That is
Hmm.
such a foreign concept,
Wow. Yeah.
to any young woman I speak with now. What do you mean? They would fire you if you didn't wear? Yeah, that was the dress code.
Right. Right.
So, um, just how they think about the what's proper, what's going to sell, they're speaking to their own demographics. We're speaking to ours. We
Yeah.
need to be able to speak to all demographics. Now, my brand is not such that I'm going to go and do a TikTok and singing and dancing in my socks. That's just not my brand. But if it were my brand, I would do it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think it's a special thing, TikTok, and I don't know that I'm doing it right. but but I think you're right. I think the idea that we're open and we're willing to listen, and we're open and willing
Mhm.
to learn new things. And like right now I'm in a PhD program, and every one of my colleagues is half my age or younger. And so, but I actually think it's fun for me because I'm learning from them as much as they're learning from me. And I think that those kind of opportunities are great. And we need to do that even as we get older. We shouldn't say, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
I'm 55, I should be, thinking about retirement and starting to, you know, go out to pasture. I think no, I think there's so many ways that we can learn and we can get better, we can improve, and but we can't if we if we stay too much in the past, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a ton to offer, but we have a ton to offer because we spent our whole entire lives learning
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
absolutely.
experiencing. Yeah, we
Yeah.
can't just cut that part off and say, okay, we're tired of all that.
Right, right, exactly. We have all this experience, and but sometimes people don't ask us about it. So
Yeah,
we get
exactly.
they're like, why didn't you ask me that? I've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't even get me started. My daughter called and asked me something, and I said, honey, seriously, I'm an executive coach. Why didn't
I know.
why
I
didn't you
know.
come to me sooner about this? But
I know. Yeah. We're the last ones that are going to ask
it
for
is what it
advice.
is.
So one thing you said, and I was curious about this, you said there's 5 important actions that leaders need to take to ensure that we leave a lasting and positive legacy for
Mm-hmm.
ourselves and our organizations. What are those
Mm-hmm.
five actions?
Now I'm gonna have to remember them.
Oh, got you on the spot.
You got me on the spot. I did rewrite them down though. Um, First of all, we've been talking about this consistently, and that is stay open-minded
Yep,
and don't quit learning. That's number one for just living, not only being
I
a leader,
agree.
but just period
Yeah,
living. Let people have emotions. People, you're as a leader, people aren't going to remember what you do as much as how you make them feel. And
yeah.
you've heard that. I don't even know who said that quote first, but it really is totally true.
Hmm.
um, Rely on your lieutenants, your trusted partners, your top line staff for the easy stuff. And when I say easy stuff, I mean, the data, the financials, the market research, et cetera, et cetera. And as a leader, it's more important for you to pay attention to your vision, your purpose, your culture, and your people.
Love that.
That is where I think a lot of leaders spend less time when they really should spend more time on those things. And then the last one is judge not.
Judge not.
Judge not.
I don't know about that one. No, I'm just kidding. No, you're right, but
Yeah.
that's where we get into the problem when we say, when we're hearing maybe, like for example, they showed some of the videos of the former TikTok, or not TikTok, but Twitter employees and the life
Yeah.
that they live, where they go to the cafeteria and then they get a cappuccino, then they go here and they go there and they have free. You're like, that's not work, like we're
Yeah.
judging, right? We're saying that that's not work. You got to do it the way I did it, which you got to bring your lunch in every day, and you have to,
Oh, yeah.
you have to be in an office that's not air conditioned, and you have to sacrifice. That's what work is. And so we judge, and I saw myself doing that when I was seeing some of those Twitter, videos of employees, like the life that they live. I'm like, that's a great life. And the reason I was angry because I was jealous. Like I want that life,
Exactly. I
right?
was just going to say, I want that life.
Right, right. Yeah,
But the thing is, and this happened when we went into remote work as well.
yeah,
It's like, why weren't we already doing more remote work?
right,
Because we
right.
didn't trust each other.
We didn't. Yeah,
We didn't. And that was my generation's values. That was
yeah,
the boomer value.
yeah.
I can't even tell you how many times I've heard an executive complain that they miss being able to walk down the aisle of cubicles and do a drive-by task assignment.
Mm, yeah,
Well, what? This actually being remote helps out because now you have to stop and ask yourself, is that really something I need to have done? And what's the priority against everything else that's going on?
yeah,
And
yeah,
by the way, employees are 9 times out of 10, they're more productive when they're working from home or working in it. And I'm not just saying just from home, but in a situation where they feel valued, where they feel
yeah.
trusted to get their work done. and not tied to a clock or, you know, outside of what's absolutely critical for the job. I mean, you're in manufacturing. You got to, people
We
have
had
to
to go.
be on the
Yeah, we
line.
had to go.
You
Yeah,
got to be there. I get
yeah.
that. But, for a lot of knowledge workers, as long as they're getting their work done, it really doesn't matter when it gets done.
And that's something that older employees, older leaders, managers have to sort of recognize that they have a
Yeah.
deficiency there. We think that you have to be there to be productive, and the truth is, a lot of stuff, a lot of things are getting done remote,
Mhm.
and we've all survived. All our company, not everybody, but a lot of companies have survived and
Oh,
thrived
yeah.
during this time. So it can be done. It can be done effective, and we just have to get used to a new way of thinking about things.
Right.
And I think that's the challenge for the older generations. As we want to be effective, we want to leave a positive legacy. We have to be open minded to, well, maybe the way I always did it isn't the best way to do things, right? Maybe there are other ways to do things.
In my mind, it's what is the goal?
Yeah,
What is the outcome? And if the outcome is happening, why should I care? Right.
yeah,
That
yeah,
just causes me to have to use more brain cells worrying about something that, isn't
yeah,
going to happen.
yeah.
So I would prefer to trust people. I think that in my personal experience as a leader, many, many years, the thing that probably feel the best about is the fact that I do trust my people.
Mm.
Once I know for sure they can get that job done, it's totally in their court, and then they just can come to me if they have problems or need me for something. Um, but trust is a big one.
Mm. Yeah, I see that
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Julie, this has been a fantastic discussion. How
Well,
can
thank
people
you.
find out more about you and your executive coaching, your
Hmm.
speaking? Where can they go to find all this information?
Okay. Well, obviously, I have a website. It's jnoonanconsulting.com. Also, I love to link in with people because a lot of times I may link in with you and then go, oh, I know somebody, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
then I can make introductions. I love to do that. So link in with me or look at my website. You can contact me from my website. Everything's there.
Well, fantastic. Well, we'll put the
Hmm.
links in the show notes for those resources. Julie, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for giving us this perspective and this way to think about how to lead in this time of change, and in a time where we have these so many generations in the workforce that
Yeah.
have different values than our values. So this has been
Hmm.
a really great discussion. Julie, thank you for coming on the show and sharing all this.
Oh, thank you, John. I really appreciate it. And I've had a ball.
I have as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.